morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Morning.
Well,
It's been a pleasure to be with you today. And we usually start just by saying that the purpose of this interview is to gather information from the relevant stakeholders in cloud computing, helping the European Commission in its pursuit to the European fit within the digital age, which in fact means how we link the digital technologies and solutions with the strong core values in Europe. So today we will just make some questions about different topics. And but before we just go to the questions, we usually invite you just to tell us a little bit about what your company does and anything that you would like us to explain.
Yeah, sure. So Canonical is a full stack independent software vendor. We are most famous for our Ubuntu operating system, which is based on GNU Linux. But we offer a full range of additional services and software around that, including OpenStack, which is a private cloud solution, MAS, which is a bare metal cloud provisioning solution, database management software, an ecosystem of open source applications and tools, and much more besides.
That's very, very interesting. So now we are going to the different questions. I hope that you feel comfortable. Just take your time. I mean, you don't have just to be very precise in anything that I will ask. Okay. So let's start first with the business modeling. Okay, well, there is a very interesting. I mean, the European Commission is very interested in this kind of thing because they would like to know how, especially from the if we have the European perspective, how to make money out of cloud computing. Okay, so that's the first question is how would it be possible to know about your company and business model patterns and pricing strategy, if there is one?
So our software is freely available. It's open source software. It's free to use, and it usually includes up to 5 years of security patches. Our ethos has always been to provide Ubuntu freely to all, but provide support and expertise at a fair price to those who need it. On the cloud, we offer free versions of Ubuntu LTS, and we also offer subscription-based support and metered usage-based models. And it's important to note that Ubuntu is the most widely adopted operating system across all of the major clouds.
Yeah, I agree. The next question would be, what are the acceleration options to boost the uptake of cloud computing technologies and solutions? What do you need is needed for that?
So I think from an enterprise perspective, there is some kind of reticence around things like, well, the US Patriot Act, Cloud Act. That's been a deterrent for many in the public sector. And I think, you know, even though there are like audit certifications and technical controls, a lot of retailers have been less convinced by Amazon and Alibaba. And I think for a lot of telecommunications providers, you know, Google has been an organization they think twice about working with. I mean, the thing is that it's quite easy to snapshot a VM. It's quite fast and it's invisible to the customer. I think another thing to consider here is that for SaaS startups or scale-ups in Europe, the average of the cost of revenue, so the average cloud bill for them, cloud expenditure bill, is about 50% of their cost of revenue. So that means that it's 50% of the money going straight out of the door to Amazon or Azure or a US or an Asian player. So I think, in all honesty, cloud infrastructure is the missing piece of the puzzle here, European cloud infrastructure. I think, in our opinion, the way to kind of bootstrap an ecosystem around cloud infrastructure is to make tactical investments that focus on, you know, building market readiness. So focused investment within a single industry rather than kind of diffuse, broad-brushed investment. I think where there are, kind of more fundamental research projects taking place, and the investment there needs to, it should align with the kind of the strategies of major open source vendors, rather than kind of building new projects that may, may compete or be left by the wayside, or cause confusion in the market. So we do think that there's been too much emphasis in the past on proprietary solutions, and that open source is actually the quickest path to market for cloud infrastructure. Why? Because the costs are lower. By leveraging open source, you drive down the costs, but you also leave it open. It's an open market. So in the sense of European liberalism, everybody has a chance in that market, in the newcomers, new debutants in the market. Yeah, I mean, I think there are two parts to this story. So there's the infrastructure, and then there's the kind of over-the-top service providers, the SaaS service providers, yep, and enablement for them. So I think that bit is pretty healthy at the moment in Europe. So there's been a real rush on open source enablement at the kind of the upper layer. What we're missing is the kind of infrastructure there.
Yeah, in fact, probably we will also talk later about this cloud federation, because from our previous interviews, there's like some they were saying that it is feasible from the technical point, but maybe it's not feasible from the business point of view.
Yeah, we have opinions on that too.
Yeah, so you agree on that. Okay. So let's move. The next one would be, I think this is a bit difficult to answer, I guess. What's the time frame would be acceptable for research and innovation outcomes generated within the context of the European cloud computing publicly funded projects to become market ready? Yes,
sure. So I think our business model is about packaging up open source software from upstream and making it market ready and useful to end customers. We think that any kind of research work commissioned by the European Commission, I mean, fairly it should be open source. I think we think that gives the best opportunity to the whole of the market. And so with that in mind, we think to answer the question more specifically, we think that kind of for kind of enablement, infrastructure enablement research, kind of 3-year timeline for something like a software for smart networking fabric or a field programmable gate array seems like a kind of a realistic time frame. If it's something more kind of consumer oriented, 18 months is more like the time frame. And I think the last point that we would like to make here is that really foundational research is probably less appropriate in this context.
Mm-hmm. It was just trying to just to figure out. I mean, because usually in some the big European projects they take 3 times, so until and then they have this exploitation plan that I think that it would be probably aligned with what you say if they just take from the beginning the idea that it has to be open source, or the way that they will exploit the results later should also contribute to the open source community, for example.
Yeah, I mean, so there, we have some opinions there as well. So there have been a lot of investments in research, but then the kind of monetization or exploitation of that, so converting the product into a marketing going concern, a business. In the past, historically at least, we felt that there hasn't been a kind of, the focus has been more on the research than on the monetization. So getting things out into the market tends to be kind of you're on your own, if you see what I mean. So there's funding for the research phase, but the development phase, it kind of, there's a short runway. So it's maybe something to dwell upon.
Yeah, and I think you have already just mentioned something that, but it's still a bit of a problem just to engage SMEs and entrepreneurs. What you mentioned, just 50%, it's just spent, it's just going out of the door, just on. So how we can engage these kind of companies into the cloud computing?
So I think the way to engage them is through SaaS, app stores, portals and marketplaces. I mean, if you look at where most of the kind of, really small business enterprise, entrepreneur, trade is to be found, it's on platforms like eBay or Shopify or Google Play, or in Asia, WeChat. I mean, this is the kind of the area that drives SME opportunity. I think, if looking beyond that to kind of, scale ups with potential. So, things like Vinted and Vestiaire Collective in Europe. You're looking at SaaS as the business model first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay, so this is a little bit just continuation of the previous one. How should the cloud infrastructure be exploited to facilitate creation of cloud-enabled ventures?
Sure. So I mean, if you look at how it's been done in America. So first we'll look at America. I mean, what they've done is they've bootstrapped conglomerates like Google on the back of cloud infrastructure investments. And then those conglomerates have then, further fed reinvestment into the market through startups like, B2B startups and B2B startups, B2C startups, I apologize. So like Databricks, Cloudera, Snowflake, Airbnb, Uber, Stripe, Workday, Zendesk, ServiceNow. There's a whole constellation of very successful scale-ups that have been, funded through part venture capital and part through, the private equity ventures of the conglomerates. So I think that's one way. I think in Asia, so in India and China, the focus has been much more on the kind of the long tail B2C, small businesses. So there they've kind of taken the approach of enablement of, local business people by giving them on a digital presence, a bit of training, advertising budget and market access, but then in exchange for either a commission, a sales commission, or a revenue share. And that model works quite well. And so our thinking is, Europe doesn't have to follow America. It doesn't have to follow Asia either. Perhaps there's some sort of middle way that would work better.
Yeah, because at this moment we don't have a big one like Google or Amazon in Europe. So somehow we will need just to figure out different ways of doing the same thing, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think the infrastructure needs to come first. You need to have some foundational infrastructure on which to build. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Otherwise, the revenue is just going straight out to other regions.
Yeah. What is the situation right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple of two more questions regarding business models. One of them is what type of actors are you interacting with the cloud computing business opportunities? And if you can talk a little bit about what is the role of the different actors.
Sure. So I mean, we see infrastructure enablers like ourselves. We see the cloud infrastructure providers, cloud service providers, proprietary software ISVs, so closed source solution vendors, non-proprietary software ISVs, which in our opinion is the way forward here. We see systems integrators. I mean, Europe has always had a very strong services sector. We see them a lot. And lastly, the kind of SaaS and other overlay services on top. This is the market. These are the players.
It is, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, and finally, I think we have already talked a little bit, but just to finalize the business model questions is, what types of cloud-based acceleration services do you provide?
Yeah, so as stated, we're a full stack ISV. We offer Ubuntu OS, which is integrated into all of the major cloud service provider portals. Mm-hmm. And it's as mentioned, the most popular on both US and Chinese compute clouds. We distribute cloud native applications as well. So we have, for example, a Kubeflow distribution, which is an AI studio. We have Handbox Cloud, which is a game streaming platform for 5G. We have, no middleware, no SQL solutions as well. We are the #1 global provider for OpenStack, which is an open source private cloud solution. And we offer kind of build services, 24/7 instant response, and managed services. And we have thousands of sites under management or support. We distribute Microcates, which is a Kubernetes solution for cloud native applications. And within more focused domains, we provide edge cloud and microcloud solutions for predominantly telco use cases. And we have a number of tier 1 European telco customers there. And then lastly, we provide telco-specific cloud enablement through OSM and network function virtualization.
Perfect. Well, this is finished with the business models, and we are just moving into something which is I think is really interesting to know your opinion, or because somehow we got different answers, and which is the skills. What does this technical? It is technical innovation and the skills. How what the skills are now available? What the skills are needed? Where we are, where we need to move, and if there are ways we can get this training. Okay. Sure. So that's the first one, of course, is just more or less this mandatory. Is why or what is the reason why there is this gap between Asia and US and Europe? If you can just have a word on that.
Well, so I mean, our thinking here is, well.
No, I meant that. Yeah, sorry. I was just, the question is that we feel there is a gap in terms of the skills from what there is in US, sorry, what is there is in Asia, from what we have in Europe. I mean, and we'd like to know if you have a word about why is that. And
I mean, honestly, I'm not aware of a big differential in skills between European and Asian and American workforce. To be honest, I don't see it. So what I find is that there is a kind of dumbing down taking place with cloud computing, in that a lot of the kind of new entrants on the job market, whether in Europe, whether in Asia, whether in the US, they have a lot of exposure to kind of pre-canned platforms as service solutions and using them, so they're users of these systems. And they have very little experience with actually building these systems, so systems integration. So our opinion is that rather than focusing on building up skills on Amazon or Microsoft Azure, which essentially define what cloud computing is, right? So, if you want to, be recognized for your cloud computing skills, you have to go to a vendor like Microsoft or Amazon and get a certificate, AWS Solution Architect or whatever it might be.
Yep.
Our opinion is that this is not the right approach. If we want to, have a competitive edge in Europe, the way forward is not that. It's providing really exceptional STEM courses at academia and providing places for people to work afterwards. Where making a welcoming environment for business where people want to stay and find their place.
Yeah, that's sure. So that do you feel that this training that is needed, or these skills are already included in different degrees offered by the academia, or the academia is still lagging behind what is really demanded by the cloud computing industry?
I think there have been some very good courses, but I'm not really qualified to remark on that.
No problem. I was just remarking that because in some of our previous interviews, they say that what they did is just take people from the computer science and degrees and training themselves in their own companies just to get the skills that they require. And that's because they miss
sure.
that.
I mean,
yeah.
From a vocational perspective, so vocational skills in cloud computing is one thing, but having the fundamental skills to actually build a cloud is another thing. So it simply depends. So for vocational training, further education, I think that the courses are there, or at least there is some nascent coverage of these areas of cloud computing. But that there's a difference between further education and higher education, and in the higher education universities, no, I don't think it's there. But I question if it should be there as well.
Yeah, that was my question. The question that is in the air is this: should the academia, should the universities just evolve and include courses or training on that specific side? But okay, so that's this question is a little bit it's interesting. Like they say, if let's just imagine that cloud computing become in other regions, become in the US and Asia becomes unavailable. It's like Europe is isolated, and now they say how far Europe. How far is Europe to have the cloud computing that will offer at least the same level of performance and security that the other regions are offering currently?
So I think here, we've got to recognize that scale plays against new entrants. So there's already a huge distance and, market skew in favor of the incumbents. I think one thing to note is that most of the incumbents had some very steady revenue stream, sustained and steady revenue stream on which to bootstrap. So if you look at Amazon, they have a store. Microsoft have Windows. Alibaba has, industrial trade. So in order to close the gap, you need to have some steady, you need to have probably a single company, honestly, with sufficient steady revenues to drive this.
And at this moment, I don't think we already have that, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay, yeah, that's always the idea.
Yeah. At this time.
Okay, so that I think that you have already just talked about, but we will finish with this question, and again from your perspective. Okay, what are the skills required on emerging cloud technologies to achieve a successful European cloud computing ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to my previous answer on this. Yeah. So we think that if you want to drive cloud computing in Europe, there are two tiers to this. There's the SaaS tier, the users, and then there's the build, the infrastructure tier. And I think, so if you want to drive success on the infrastructure tier, then you need to have very high quality STEM courses and, build innovation. On the kind of user tier, yeah, I mean, what you said previously is correct. So there are a lot of university graduates coming into the market with limited skill on this stuff who then get trained up. I don't think that that's the right place to be hiring people for these roles, though. I think probably further education is more appropriate. Anyway, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, sure. No, your opinion is perfect. that's what we would like to do. Okay, just moving to the next topic. I think that this is talking about governance or organizational structure. Here we have received different different answers. So what do you think? I mean, what is the structure for an organization? Well, the organizational structure. What do you think is more suitable to support active collaboration on the stakeholders' participation?
Sure. I mean, if you think about the structure of most venture capital portfolios, it's actually remarkably similar to the structure of open source software. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of different initiatives under different portfolios with a lot of overlap and some competition. And it's the same with open source. A lot of different portfolios, lots of competition, lots of overlap. And by doing that, you kind of create a kind of, much like any other liberalized market, you create an opportunity for collaboration, for competition, and for poorly conceived ventures to fail quickly, fast fail. So, this is the organization structure that we would recommend. So something around open source at the heart of all of this is most likely the way forward. I think that one thing to note is that, there have been some predatory practices. AWS is famous for it, honestly. And that does skew the market against the smaller players.
Okay. And the next one is, what advantage should cloud federated model needs to be successful? I mean, and here is just stated from the point of view of acceptance by providers and consumers. And here is again just more focus on what is the situation now in Europe, when we have several cloud providers with different business models. So sometimes you get one services from one cloud provider, and you need to get the other services from the other cloud provider. So it.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds to me, honestly, a bit like a kind of utility model, like electricity or telecommunications or a post office.
It is, yes.
And I think the problem there is that you're competing against organizations that are not utilities. Amazon is very definitely not a utility, and I can't see it working. It's an interesting proposition. I think another problem here is around how would it work for the customer? I think there would be a lot of confusion, to be honest, procurement confusion, possibly friction as well. So technically it might work, but from a kind of practical perspective, I'm not so sure. I think one of the problems as well with that model is that by treating the infrastructure as utility, you're kind of removing the the innovation element from it, which the competition aren't doing. So Amazon isn't going to take out innovation. And Amazon is a bottomless pit of innovation. It's interesting. Is this the strategy that will be pursued? We wonder.
Well, that we have seen there are initiatives here in Europe just to go into this cloud federation model. It is true. Because it's not like we don't have any Amazon there in Europe. So the different cloud providers that are here are rather small, and they have this, as I said, different business models and different services that are offered. And the only way that they are at least working nowadays is just to merge all together into something that from the perspective of customers, it will be like a single provider. Okay, so you don't have just you will get all the services from your perspective from one specific cloud provider, instead of just going to one provider for one services and to the another one for other services.
So if you look at the US kind of market, it is quite federated in the sense that it is a market. There are multiple players there. But if you look back in the history of that market, initially there was one player, Amazon. They got their GovCloud win, which was gave them credibility as well as revenue, and so that was really the only credible player in the market for a long time. And then later, Azure came along, Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud, Google Cloud. But they came later. And so there is a market there, but it's a market that was initially a market with one player. The rest of the market, so the federated market, has come over time. And I think, the US government has made tactical investments there, one way or another, first in Amazon and then later, awarding contracts to other other players as seen fit.
Yeah. I mean, I more or less agree with you. I mean, that's what you know. The European Commission would like us to know if this will work. I mean, and if there is something that needs to be done just so that the Cloud Federation will be successful, what is needed. But I mean, you're not the only one that's saying that. From the technical point of view, it looks feasible, but from the business perspective, it doesn't look doesn't have much sense. But that's okay. So let's move to the last two topics, which is cybersecurity and software engineering in the cloud. Okay.
Yeah.
And which is from cybersecurity. It's also identify one of the hot topics there in cloud computing. And the question is, for example, what are the characteristics of trustworthy software infrastructure for your organization? As for example, it has to be reliable, stable, frequently updated, secure, those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, so the first point I'd like to note is there is no such thing as trustworthy software, really. And we advise our customers, or at least encourage our customers, to adopt a kind of zero trust security standpoint. I think another thing to note is that we are an operating system vendor. So for us, building a trustworthy compute platform is what we base our reputation on. So yeah, for us it's essential. It's what our business model is founded on. I think I'd like to note that we have some other solutions that go beyond, the four noted concerns there. I mean, we have our next generation operating system, Ubuntu Core, for example, which is completely designed on, multi-level security system architecture, and we offer, a bunch of other services to help our customers to build the most secure solutions they can. For example, FIPS compliance and zero downtime kernel patching. We have CIS benchmark and common criteria profiles. So for us, we take this very seriously, and for us, it's what we build our business on.
That's good to hear. I mean, that's because in several surveys that we have done to some specific stakeholders, security is one of the main concerns.
Yeah.
So one other aspect is regarding in your opinion, which compliance issues are the most difficult to address? Okay, we are talking about the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations. If there's a backdoor, which there should be any backdoors, vulnerabilities, cybersecurity, quality metrics of these kind of things. So which of all of them, it's from your perspective the most difficult to address?
So I think from our perspective, well, let's put it like this. Compliance laws, there's a maxim, hard cases make bad laws. And I fear that personally, so speaking personally, that GDPR may fall into that category slightly. What we would like to see is a level playing field of equitability where, not literal equality applies. So not everybody has to comply with the law, the letter of the law in exactly the same way. And face the same consequences, but there's a bit of equitability there. Because what we find happens is that large players can swallow bureaucracy and compliance, and it just increases the distance.
And then the next question is is about certification. Okay, so here, the spice about the benefits of customer trustworthiness in cloud services, with results from leveraging recognized security certifications. And here we talk about the European Cybersecurity Act, which is the EUCSA. For us, it's also true that for European cloud providers, they currently face multiple challenges to certify their services, especially related with the big fragmentation in the domain of existing certification schemes. Again, we are just going into the typical fragmentation within Europe.
Sure.
The question is, well, first, if you know something about this European Cybersecurity Act, and what do you think about this need of certification just to make to gather trust from the customers and from the consumers, I might say.
So sure. So I'm not familiar with the specifics of this initiative, but what I would say is that any aspiring European cloud service provider would want to have a global footprint, ultimately, and so it won't necessarily solve fragmentation for a European cloud service provider. It may increase it, if you see what I mean. If you have to comply with FedRAMP, with, you know, yeah, I don't know, all of the other gazillions, so ISO 27001 to HIPAA, you know, all of the major certification and compliance audits out there, it's adding another one.
So sorry, sorry for that. Okay,
No
so let's move to the last topic. I think we are almost there,
Yeah.
which is software engineering in the cloud. And of course, the first question, it has to be a yes, because do you develop or sell software with your offering?
Yeah, so well, we collate, maintain, and support the world's open source. We also do research and development ourselves, and we provide testing and lifecycle management around all of that. So yes,
yeah.
And what we do is pretty comprehensive.
Okay, so as you said, yes. So the second question is how is it done? It says this is you have an in-house team, you are outsourcing within the Europe, or you are outsourcing in Asia, North America, outsourcing elsewhere, buy directly from someone else software.
So we have a global workforce. We've done remote first working for around 18 years. So it's been the modus operandi of the organization from the very beginning. We do have office workspaces. We have them in London, Houston, Boston, and Taipei. And personally, I'm located in Belgium, and I have colleagues all over Europe and indeed the world. Mm-hmm. I think we have around 300 of our staff, which is a significant amount of the staff based in Europe, if you count the UK as well. And around half of the staff is based in Europe. So half
of the staff in Europe and half of the half in US, or
no, the rest of the staff is spread globally, but so we have around half the staff in Europe and around 300 headcount in Europe and the UK.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now we would like to know a little bit about the methodology for software development and operations. If you're using waterfall, iterative, agile, DevOps, others, can you just tell us a little bit?
Yeah, so our software engineering teams, they respect the 4 agile principles, which are, you know, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, working software over paperwork and documentation, and responding to change over following a plan.
Okay. I think that's enough. And then the last questions, and I will just go straight to it. What are your organization's greatest current concerns about software development and operations? What are your main challenges? For example, automation of processes, skills, financial viability, regulatory issues, but tool supports.
Yeah, so I mean, at the moment, we're seeing a surge in demand for our software and our services, like really massive. So our main concern right now is substantially growing our global workforce.
Sorry, say it again.
Substantially growing our global workforce. So scaling our engineering capability and the support teams around that.
Okay, that's what your main challenge.
Yep. Okay,
so it's there is anything that else that you would like us, within the topic that you are in this interview, within the European cloud computing, this is the time for your course, and then we will just conclude the interview.
No, it's fine. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity to talk about this subject. It's greatly appreciated on behalf of Canonical and myself. So thank you very much.
Well, from my side, I wouldn't say that from the Half-Full Cloud project, and again from the European Commission side, we will appreciate your feedback, because it will be very useful just to design the guidelines for the next research projects.
Yeah.
So, Tops, really a real pleasure. Thanks a lot.
It's been a great pleasure. Take care.
Take care.
Now.